All right, so here we go. Welcome to the Cognitive Performance Masterclass. So why does this matter? For you guys, first responders, you're always faced with a high pressure and life-threatening situations, and you need to be able to make split-second decisions. Those decisions can have massive repercussions. They can literally be life and death decisions. So it's hyper important that you guys are on it mentally, that you're operating at the best you can possibly be when it comes to your cognitive performance. So you have focus and decision making. Those are the things we're going to look at today in particular. So how can we sharpen your focus, and how can we help you make better decisions? Because ultimately that's what's going to help you get better results, both in work and also out of work within your own personal life. These two things really apply to everything, even outside of your job. They apply to everything. If you can focus well and make good decisions, then you're going to get better results. So for you guys, there's so many different aspects. You need to be able to communicate effectively. You need to be able to actually coordinate with a team. You need to be able to convey instructions and also receive instructions. And if you can't focus on what's being said and what's being communicated, then of course things go wrong. You need to be able to follow your safety protocols and be efficient within that. And of course, that requires the ability to remember and ultimately then prioritize things. You need to be able to make decisions, like we said, critical decision making in the moment. You've got complex things going on. You've got all this stuff going on around you. You need to be able to assess the scene. You need to be able to respond in an emergency, and of course, handle everything that's going on around you at the same time and make solid decisions. You need to be able to adapt, because things might change very quickly. And part of adaptability is resilience, the ability to bounce back from one thing to another. So if you have strong cognitive abilities, then you're going to be able to do that more efficiently. You're also going to be more resilient. You're going to be able to manage your stress more effectively. And then, of course, we've got risk mitigation. So, like we said, those split-second decisions will have consequences. So your ability to actually look at that and be able to go, well, if I do this, then this might happen, this could happen. Particularly if you are, a police officer or, a fire fighter, where you have those big decisions to make very quickly. So, for example, if you're dealing with chemical spills, huge fires, anything involving shooters, where you're going to have to make those decisions and understand what the risks are in the moment. And then, of course, just general performance, being able to perform optimally when you are under pressure. A huge part of that is how well your brain works and how well you can focus on what's going on without actually crumbling under the pressure. Does your focus get sharper, or does it splinter and you really struggle to figure out what's going on? So super important for you guys. So the core elements of this come down to these four things: attention and your ability to direct it, memory, your ability to solve problems, and ultimately your ability to make decisions. If you can direct your attention, then that will improve your focus. Attention and focus are kind of the two foundational aspects of your cognitive performance. If we can direct our mental resources towards the right information, filter out distractions, then of course we're going to be able to concentrate better, task performance gets better, decision making gets better, we're more accurate in what we're doing. So attention is huge, and it ties in with focus. Focus is ultimately what you get as a result of directing your attention, okay? They are cognitive processes that allow you to selectively concentrate on something, okay? Filtering is a huge thing, the ability to actually filter out the useless information and take what is most relevant in the situation. And the two tend to get used interchangeably. But focus specifically is that ability to direct all of your mental resources, all of your cognitive power to a task, an objective, or a goal, and actually sustain your attention on that specific thing, and ignore everything that's going on around you. Okay. So for you guys, that's a lot more difficult. You know, for an average person, that's going to be notifications on their phone. It's going to be, you know, people asking for their attention. For you, in an emergency situation, it's millions of different variables. So it's much, much harder to actually find focus. But if we can do that, and like we said, we're going to be doing our job better. Plus, you're also going to find that from a life perspective, you get more done because if you can focus, you're not scattered and you're not going to be jumping from thing to thing. It also helps with relationships because if you can focus on the person you're with rather than being distracted by your phone and all these millions of different things and being in your head so much, you notice relationships get better. Anyway, so attention, like we said, is a slightly more kind of broad concept, and that's all kinds of cognitive processes. So you've got selective attention, sustained attention, divided attention, and ultimately comes down to that executive control and the ability to actually point your attention at things. So if we can learn to train our attention and regulate it better, we're going to have better focus, and then of course we're going to be thinking better. So how do these things work? Now, I don't want to go too sciencey on you. I don't want to go too deep into this, but I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview. So we have your brain networks, okay? So all of those complex neural networks in the brain, including the front of your brain, so your prefrontal cortex, your thalamus, and your parietal cortex, they're all kind of working together to regulate your attention, okay? And to allocate your mental resources accordingly. They're filtering information based on its relevance and its usefulness, okay? So you might be listening to me now and the science doesn't feel relevant to you, so you're tuning out, your attention's gone, and that's okay, but bring it back, okay? And then, of course, we've got top-down and bottom-up processes, so this ability to actually direct your attention based on your personal internal goals and your intentions. You have all the neurotransmitters as well, so the chemicals in your brain. If these are not working as they should, if they are dysregulated, then that can impair your ability to hold attention. Of course, we know nowadays that we have many attention deficit disorders, you know, hyperactivity, underactivity, all those kinds of things. And that's literally a case of the chemicals not quite working as they should, just being dysregulated. And then we have your attention control network. So there are specific networks in your brain that are involved in attention, okay? And like we said, you've got these two types of networks, things that are goal orientated for your attention, so your ability to actually go after a goal, and then ones that are more stimulus driven, so automated processes. So we all have those things that are happening in our body without us having to think about it. Those things work together to help you ultimately function better, okay? Similar to when we've talked about the subconscious mind. So that's kind of where we're at, okay? These are things that can be worked on, they can be built, they can be improved. In some instances, if you do have, you know, dysregulated neurotransmitters, then it can be a little bit harder. If you do have ADHD, it can be harder. These are things that may require external help. You know, you may need medication and other things to help with that. But they're all things that can be improved, all things that we can work on. So, as we said, information needs to be filtered, directed, and that's how we ultimately get our focus and our attention. And that's what your brain is trying to do all the time with these different processes, the different neurotransmitters, the neural networks, the different portions of the brain. That's ultimately what it comes down to, is these two things, filtering and directing information. So how can we do this? How can we improve on these things? What techniques can we incorporate? How can we actively try and work on improving our attention, improving our memory, improving our ability to solve problems, our ability to make decisions? So we're going to go through a few of these techniques, and then at the end, I'll help you kind of string it all together into something that is applicable for you. I think it's also important to note that we're going to talk a little bit about flow. If you have been through the Sovereign Soldier program and you've gone through phase 3, we go really deep into that, because flow is ultimately the ability to actually harness focus and optimize your mental output. So that's going to be really important as well. If you can learn to do that, your thoughts become more like a sniper, and you can direct rather than machine gunning your thoughts everywhere and kind of being stuck in your head and overthinking everything. So, a couple of things we can do. Cognitive drills. So there's three kind of main things that you can do with this. The first one is rapid visual scanning. So actually forcing yourself to look at stuff with speed and build that up. That coincides with kind of physical reaction time exercises. So you're making your brain work faster, and then you're making your body work faster. And then, of course, pattern recognition, things that, you can do on a daily basis. So playing brain games, as much as we don't want to be on screen times and things like that, some of the brain games that are out there are fantastic. Crossword puzzles, board games, things like Scrabble, all that stuff is actually forcing your brain to work. That's ultimately training your brain. It's training your cognitive ability. When it comes to your physical fitness, so you guys all train, you know what to do. If you can challenge your physical fitness and change it up, so balance drills, speed drills, changes of direction, those are all fantastic for helping train your cognitive abilities. One of the best things I've found, and also one of the most difficult things, is a boxing drill. You've probably seen it. It's a ball on a string. You put a headband on, you got the ball with a string, and your job is just to work the ball. But the ball is about that big, and obviously it's on a rubber string. So it sounds simple in principle, but it's not. And you're actually having to combine the physical aspect of hitting a moving target with the mental aspect of noticing where this is going. So that rapid visual scanning of where is it, where is it, where is it? And if you get it wrong, it hits you in the face. So you learn pretty fast. So that is one of the best things you can actually put into your physical training routine to help you with that. And then the other thing is just mundane attention. Now, this is something we practice in one of the Warriors Path trainings. Very simple. When you are doing a day-to-day activity, so making a bed, making some coffee, cooking dinner, brushing your teeth, whatever it is, just an activity that you do every day, we tend to get in our heads and our mind is elsewhere whilst we're going through that task because it is so automated. We can do it without thought. Actually learning to bring your attention back to that and do it with absolute focus and watch yourself doing it. So, for example, if you're making coffee, putting the coffee into the, however you make coffee. So we do it in a cafetiere, putting the coffee in, pressing boil on the kettle, listening to it boil, watching it boil, pouring it in, just doing all that basic stuff with absolute attention and focus will, of course, improve your cognitive ability because you're training yourself to do something and be there present in the moment while it's happening. And that's training those parts of your brain to do that rather than do everything on autopilot. So those are a couple of things you can actually start to do to build out this improvement in your cognitive ability. Then, of course, we have the attention training. So this is a little bit more specific, training your attention and learning to bring it back. Meditation is one of the best ways to do this. Okay. You can do focused breath work. And you can also use visualization, and you can kind of combine all of those things together. And that is done for you in the 4-phase Project Tempest meditation. Okay. We go through a mantra at the beginning. We go through some focused breathing. So we do the heart breathing and we use visualization. So just the art of actually using that specific meditation consistently will help your brain work better. If you don't have access to that because you're not a member or whatever, then you can use any kind of guided meditations. There's loads out there. You can also practice unguided, where you literally sit with your thoughts and you notice and name, that was a thought, that was a sensation, another thought, another physical sensation. And every time you have them, rather than running off the thought, you actually just come back to your breath and follow it. You just go through that process of noticing and naming. It's difficult, really, really difficult, but it's worthwhile. And then using mantra meditations. So like I said before, you just got that focus on that mantra back and forth, back and forth. When you do that, you'll notice that you start really well, and then over time it stops and you lose the mantra. But if you can pull it back to that and keep going, then you'll notice that you see an improvement. Okay, so if you're not currently doing some form of meditation practice, those are some things that you can actually start to incorporate now to help build up your kind of attention ability as such. And it, like we said before, it comes down to the ability to actually just maintain concentration on a task or on a stimulus, whatever it is, without distraction. That's why the brain power, when it's measured, of master meditators is so much higher than the average person. Like we can see this, we can measure this on, the EEGs, and we can see the difference in brainwaves. We can see the ability to physically shift the brainwaves to different types, the ability to hit gamma wave meditations, the ability to drop between alpha and theta. It all comes down to practicing this, and you can obviously take that and then transfer it into a high pressure situation. Then decision making. So this is the next aspect, your ability to actually use your new and improved focus and take it into decision making. So decision making tends to come down to one, cognitive bias. Okay, so we all have cognitive bias, like systematic patterns and ways of thinking that ultimately influence the decisions we make, things that stop us from being truly objective in our judgment and then affect our outcomes. And that comes down to your beliefs, it comes down to perceptions, your worldviews, your behaviors, all these kinds of things. Everybody has a cognitive bias. Being aware of your cognitive bias can help you make better decisions, okay? Because you're able to go, hang on a minute, the decision I'm about to make, I'm making because I have a belief such as. And, cognitive bias is huge. It influences everything. Let me just shut the door there because the dog made an appearance. So actually being aware of your biases, you don't necessarily need to change them if they work well for you. But if they're not working well for you, then, recognizing that they need to change can be hugely important. Because it allows us to be more rational, it allows us to be more objective, it allows us to make better, more informed judgments without our shit getting in the way. So working on that can be a big thing, actually just being aware of it and noting it down, and every time you feel you're making a decision based on that, just actually checking yourself. The ability to analyze scenarios, and then of course if then workflow is fantastic. This is highly applicable to you guys because you can go through, so this is the outcome I want. If I do this, then I can do that or that. And actually just going through that on paper and looking at potential outcomes and scenarios is fantastic because it trains you to look at potential outcomes and to consider all of the variables. Plus, our brain really likes to make connections. And if you can create connections and actually do it on paper, you'll notice that you start to shift the brain chemistry, and we tend to create the conditions for feeling more motivated. So if you go into the motivation protocols, for those of you that have access, you do a link building exercise in there that helps you, because that's a precursor for the brain chemistry for feeling more motivated. So that's huge as well. One, you're training yourself to look at different outcomes and different variables and to consider these different things. And two, you're actively shifting the brain chemistry towards feeling more motivated and actually just better about everything. So that's a big one for you. So in terms of how you can actually practice those, the Truth Seeker protocol and the Perspective protocol, because those will actually challenge you to look at things from different angles. Okay, so if you want to work on that, pull one of those up from the vault and actually just work through it. This Perspective one is great for stopping you and testing your own stories and challenging your cognitive biases about things. And the Truth Seeker protocol is great because it actually asks you to go through all the variables and look at things from different angles. So have a go with them because they are fantastic. So really, really important things to train, but also highly applicable, highly, practicable things. Now, I mentioned earlier flow and focus. Okay, now, these two things go hand in hand. Focus is a precursor to flow. Okay, now, like I said, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail in this because we cover it in the third phase of the Sovereign Soldier program. But this is essentially the flow cycle. Okay, we start to struggle. This is where we're forcing ourselves to focus. Okay, if you can maintain that focus for a period of time, and then you're able to actively release it, you'll notice that there's a shift in brain waves and there's a shift in brain chemistry. Okay, and that is how we then enter flow. So the brainwave shift again, body chemistry shifts again, and we can actually find ourselves in that peak performance state where everything just goes right. Okay, that's what flow is. It's where we're just working, everything just works for us. Focus is there, physical ability is there. It's like we can't do anything wrong. And you probably noticed times where you have flow in your world. It's happened to you. And because things go so well when we're in flow, people have become obsessed with thinking about how we can actively harness flow. How can we force it to happen? And we now understand that if we can go through this flow cycle, then we can hit flow. And an important part of that at the end of it is recovery, and shifting through different brainwave cycles and allowing ourselves to recover from it. But we can actively try and build flow into our day. And I'll give you a couple of things that you can do. Like I said, Sovereign Soldier goes into this in detail, so you want to go through that. But actually working in 90-minute blocks. So whatever it is you're working on, actually just sitting down and working in a 90-minute block with no distractions whatsoever. So making sure your environment is prepped, you have everything you need, micro-stepping all your tasks so you know exactly what you've got to do, and then literally just sitting there for 90 minutes and doing it with no distractions whatsoever. That, one, tests your focus, and two, it forces it. You're forcing yourself to actively struggle so that you create this shift in brainwaves, this shift in neurochemistry. And then when you come to the end of that 90-minute block, if you release and you spend a few minutes just actually doing something different, usually something physical can help, the brainwave shift. We hit an alpha state, which is where we heighten our focus. And then we notice that, hang on a minute, we're in flow. So we can get back to whatever it is we're doing, and we can do it with greater efficiency. Okay, we can work through that cycle. And like I said, if you want to go deeper into that, you want to know how to do that, you want the Sovereign Soldier program, because we talk about how to implement all of that at a higher level. So let's talk about some of the other things that we can do to help with focus. So from a kind of nutrition perspective, of course, we have supplements. Some supplements are fantastic, some are crap. I've tried all kinds of nootropics, all kinds of kind of brain building supplements. Some work great, some don't. But if we break it down to kind of the basics, omega-3, okay? We know that we need omega-3 for our brain to work really well, okay? If you eat a lot of fish, then you could probably get away without it, but it won't hurt just to add some extra omega-3 in there. Really important for feeding your grey matter and improving cognitive function, memory, mood regulation, all that kind of stuff. So that's the top one, okay? Omega-3s. And I think this is going off topic now, but if you do eat fish, obviously we have a lot of issues with farming and quality of fish and all that kind of stuff. So even if you are someone that regularly consumes fish, the actual omega-3 content of it is probably not as high as it should be, depending on where you get it from. You know, if it's wild caught, then it's going to be better than something that has been farmed. And bear that in mind with the supplements as well. If you can get something that is wild caught, omega-3, then that's going to be better for you. Okay. The second one would be some kind of vitamin B complex, in particular B6, B12, and folate. Okay. It's not something I take personally, because when I've had my various tests done, I know my vitamin B is okay, but it's really important in synthesis of neurotransmitters. So you may find supplementing with vitamin B helps a lot. Then, of course, everyone's favorite, caffeine. Like who can live without coffee? But we have to be careful to moderate it. If you know you struggle with ADHD and things like that, and that is something that is part of your life, caffeine probably doesn't affect you, because we understand that if you have that set of kind of neurotransmitters and things are kind of slightly dysregulated, caffeine doesn't do a whole lot for you. So just being mindful about your regulation of that. And even if caffeine does affect you, be mindful, because excessive intake obviously affects your sleep. And sleep is the ultimate way to heal the brain. And you know what it's like if you don't sleep, you feel like crap. And none of this stuff matters. Okay, ultimately, if you're not sleeping well and recovering, then you can train your brain as much as you want. It's not going to work well because you're not sleeping. Everything comes back to sleep. And then there's one final supplement which I'm going to show you. Out of all of the supplements I have taken over the years, this Brainzyme is actually one of the best I have found. They do two types. They do three. They do a calming one, which I didn't notice much difference with. But bearing in mind, I've been taking supplements for years and take a lot of caffeine, whatever. They do Focus Elite, which is a purple label if you look these up. That one was okay, but if I didn't time it right with food, it made me feel really sick. But this one, the Focus Pro, I found that to be really, really good. So it is literally just a series of vitamins and active herbs and ingredients and stuff that just seems to work really well. Like that's the best one I have found specifically for focus. So it's called the Brainzyme. If you want to look that up, it's not expensive either. So if you can't find the link, message me and I'll send it to you. But it will go without saying that supplements are just that. They are supplemental. They're things that are in addition to a good diet. Okay. Basic nutrition will come first. If you're constantly eating loads of sugar, too much caffeine, you're not feeding your brain well, then supplements are irrelevant. You can't fix a bad diet with a shitload of supplements. Making sure you're hydrated, minimizing sugar, getting plenty of healthy fats, because your brain is predominantly made of fat. And although it requires glucose to function, you still need a good balance of micro and macronutrients plus adequate calories as well. Again, in Sovereign Soldier, we do a brain reset where we look at some of these details. So it's worth considering that. So as well as your physical consumption, the food you're eating, we also need to look at your mental consumption. So today we are more switched on than ever, okay? We're constantly bombarded with information from all kinds of sources. A lot of it's irrelevant and it's distracting. So if we can limit our consumption of useless information, we can reduce our cognitive overload and improve our own mental clarity. So being selective about what you're intaking. So for example, I don't watch the news. I don't read the news. I don't have Facebook on my phone. I only use it for my laptop for work purposes. I don't use TikTok anymore because that's just waste of space. So all these kinds of things, actually just limiting that and limiting your mindless scrolling or news consumption will help, because those are mental drains on your energy. You've got limited mental bandwidth. Think of it like a computer, okay? There's only so many megabytes available. And if you're ramming too much stuff down that line, then it's not going to work properly. A digital detox can help hugely. So actually just taking a break from it all, giving your brain a rest so it can recharge, and setting your own boundaries for your screen time and kind of designated time periods where you just go completely tech free, okay? And actually just engage in the real world. Do real things that will help you feel better and rejuvenate your mind. And then, of course, like we said, with being selective, you've got mindful consumption. So actually just looking at the things you're going to consume and understanding how it's going to affect your mental state, and then choosing whether or not to consume that or to do something different. So, for example, clickbaity news headlines are not going to be as beneficial as picking up a book that you're interested in and reading that. So just being more mindful about what you're consuming, why you're consuming it, and where you're consuming it. Okay? So that's going to be a big one. So how do we take all of this information that I've just blasted you with and turn it into something practical? So the first thing is to tweak your power games, okay? So for example, changing your meditation. So if you're currently doing, I don't know, whatever meditation you're doing, choosing either a mantra-based meditation or choosing the 4-phase meditation, or going completely unguided. Based on what you're currently doing, change it, okay? And make it something that works for you, okay? So changing meditation, something that's more focus-based. Your journal, using one of those protocols to help you kind of do the if-then exercise. So Truth Seeker protocol, the perspective protocol, doing one of those a day, just to challenge you to shift your mindset, to be more objective. And then, like we said, noting down cognitive biases. So you can do that in your journal. So when you sit down and review your day, consider all the times where you've noticed a cognitive bias come up and write it down. Because the first step to change anything is always awareness. Movement, as we said earlier, incorporating some novelty into your movement. So rather than just doing what you would normally do, change how you're moving. So try something that incorporates balance, something that's a little bit more difficult, some kind of flowy movement patterns, or as I said earlier, getting yourself one of those boxing balls on a string and working on that, because that's, novel, and it's also incredibly challenging mentally and physically. And then for your behold point, where you do something for yourself, play a brain game. Give yourself 10 minutes to play a brain game. Okay, so just tweak those power games to reflect what we've talked about here. And it doesn't have to be huge, because these are things that you're already doing. So you just tweak them. Next thing is a 7-day digital detox. So as you shift the focus and you spend the next week playing your power games in a slightly different way, do a detox, okay? Get off social media, delete it all off your phone. Or if you need to go on it for work or for whatever, then limit your time. Give yourself like 1 hour slot here, 1 hour slot there. Don't just sit there scrolling. That could be as simple as leaving your phone in a different room. So just find a way to do a digital detox just for 7 days. Honestly, if I was going to do it, I would just go completely off everything. For you guys, like I said, I need to use it for work, so I would put in an hour. But if I was in your position and I didn't need to use it for work, just turn it all off, delete it all. Don't go in, don't log in for a week. The world won't end. You'll probably find you're a lot more present, a lot happier, and your brain functions better. And then the final thing is to ask yourself, what am I not doing to care for my nervous system? Because like I said earlier, so you can read that, none of this matters if you're not taking care of your nervous system, because a frazzled nervous system fucks everything. Okay, if you're not sleeping, you're not getting in some recovery time, you can play brain games till you're blue in the face. Doesn't matter. So what are those basic things that you're doing to take care of your nervous system? So that's going to be your task for the next week. 1, make sure you're doing the basics, taking care of the nervous system. Are you managing your stress levels? Are you using your recovery protocol stuff? Are you sleeping well enough? Are you eating well? All that kind of stuff. Delete everything for a week. Log out. Don't log in. Just leave it. Just get off it for a week. And if you find yourself getting itchy thumbs and wanting to go into it, then that's a clear sign that you need to detox from it for a week. And then, of course, tweak your power games so that you'll be a bit more active in the process of training your brain. So changing how you physically move a little bit, changing how you're journaling to make it something more if-then type flows and cognitive bias, awareness, that kind of stuff. Meditation, something super focus-based. And you should notice after the course of a week, your mind feels a lot fresher. Your ability to think becomes a lot clearer. So that's what I would like you to have a go at. You can share how you get on in the Warriors World group. You can share your Power Games plan, excuse me, and you can let us know how you get on. Now, as always, I'd like to know your biggest takeaway from this. I know I've hit you with a lot of information, but I want to know what you've taken away from it. Okay, again, you can share that in the Warriors World group. Let us know, what did you take away, and ultimately, what are you going to do? So that's everything for this week. You understand a little bit more about how we can improve cognitive performance. You understand the different aspects of it, the idea of focus, attention, memory, and decision making. Those are the core components. You understand a little bit how the brain works. You understand how we can use techniques to improve these things. And then you've got a little plan for the next 7 days to bring it all together. So let me know what you're going to do, what you've taken away, and how you're going to implement this. and check in with me in the group. And if you need any links to anything or there's anything you're not sure about, drop me a line. And I'll see you at the next roundtable.